Bible study Wednesday night here at the house of God. If you all will please bow your heads, we'll start with prayer. Great eternal Father, thank you so very much for allowing us this opportunity to come together to hear your word and to comprehend your word. We ask you to please descend your spirit upon us so that we can take to heart the messages we are about to hear. Father, please take away any and all distractions while we are conducting this Bible study here and also to everyone that's listening so that we can get the full impact of your message. Father, thank you for everything you've given us, so let it be. Once again, welcome everyone. Now, if you want to watch this, it's houseofgod.tv is if you want to watch it live. And if you want to send us a comment, it can be over what we are talking about. It can just be, hey, we're here, we hear you, everything's good to go, just whatever you want. We will try to answer any questions you send us, either about what we're talking about, or if something's on your mind or if you don't like what we're talking about and you've got a better subject, hey, give it a shot. You may divert us and maybe you won't. But if you want to send us a message, it's in small letters, House of God 1015 at gmail.com. That's little letters or lowercase letters, House of God 1015 at gmail.com. Oh, yes. And remember, a week from this Sunday, not this coming Sunday, but the following Sunday at sunset, it will be Passover for everyone, and we're having it at all of our local congregations. Ensure you bring a towel, and ensure you bring the right attitude. With those two things, you will have a very blessed Passover. The attitude God will appreciate, and the towel is no one wants to share their towel with your feet. So use your own towel. And I have no comments, announcements.
First and last day of unleavened bread.
Very good. First day of unleavened bread will be in Georgetown at the Community Center. Now, if you're trying to get an address from me,
405 East Morrow.
405 East Morrow, you got the address out of me. And it starts at 11 o'clock.
Last days there, same time.
Correct.
Same station.
Tuesday is a week from this coming Tuesday is the first day of Days of Unleavened Bread. That is when, obviously, it's Days of Unleavened Bread, and Monday is the last day, and we are required to assemble on both of those days. And what else am I missing? Obviously something. I just can't remember. So with that,
Pentecost. No.
Make sure
Pentecost.
out of your house.
Yeah.
Pentecost is 40 days after the last day, and then you can get into all the numbering after that.
50 days.
Yeah, 50. You're absolutely right. I'm trying to get there quicker.
Yeah, make sure you get the leavening out of your house.
Yes. I didn't want to go too far in that because I didn't want to get too much of a row going. But make sure your house is as God requires
There you go.
for Days of Unleavened Bread.
Very good.
And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, and let you.
I do have something I want to comment on and be sure everybody knows that Robert Bruce, a minister of ours in Kansas City, died last Sunday night after 3 years of fighting cancer. And
How long was he predicted to live?
6 weeks.
yeah, about 6 weeks.
And God gave him 3 years.
I thought it was longer than that.
No. 6 weeks.
Well, from Frank's
No, I
birthday.
mean, I thought he lived longer than
No.
3 years.
No, it's almost 3 years to the date because when he was down here for Frank's 80th birthday, after he went back, he called me and he told me he had been diagnosed with cancer again.
Yeah. So
And he was complaining when he was down here.
yeah.
So
I understand he's having a private funeral, but we need to keep his family in our prayers.
And when you pray for the family, just ask God to give them peace of mind and comfort. That is one of the greatest gifts God can give us.
Is that understanding of what happens when you die?
Yes.
Not that nebulous. I'm up here somewhere staring down at people, you know. But Robert, we're going to miss Robert greatly. He was,
Yes.
you know, hard-working guy, and I know he really sacrificed himself to see people, to take care of people, and you know, he's really going to be missed.
Yes.
So, but we need to pray for his family.
Yes.
You know, so, all right. Other than that, then I guess we're at Ezekiel 7. That's where we'll start. It says, "Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, And you, son of man, thus says the Lord God to the land of Israel, an end. The end is coming on the four corners of the land. Now the end is upon you, and I shall send my anger against you, and I shall judge you according to your ways, and bring all your abominations upon you. For my eyes will have no pity on you, nor shall I spare you, but I shall bring your ways upon you, and your abominations will be among you, and you will know that I am the Lord." And again, he says, "You will know that I am the Lord." So, you know, that's something I'm kind of watching for all the time, I guess. You know, once we know that God is active again, and He'll let people know, He'll say, I'm the Lord. We'll know it when this calamity comes to us. It won't be just a hurricane or a tornado or something like that. You know, we'll know it's God's doings.
Mike, just out of curiosity, when it says the four corners of the land, that is encompassing all of Israel, because he uses that exact same wording in Revelations when he's going to put four angels on the four corners of the earth to hold back the wind. And also when there's fighting with Gog and Magog, it's all four corners where it's going to encompass everything. So
there's also references when he uses these actual names, which are the northern border and the southern border and the eastern border and the western border. He talks about them more specifically.
Yep.
So that'll be the whole land. It says, "Thus says the Lord God, a disaster or calamity, unique disaster, behold, it is coming. An end is coming, the end has come, and it has awakened against you. Behold, it is come." You know, he's talking mostly against Jerusalem here. You know, because of the things that they have done, which we'll get into in the next little group.
Isn't Jerusalem the only city that is still under the control of Israel? Everything else has been taken over by Babylon or any other country. I don't know, somewhere I read that Jerusalem was the only sustainable city.
It was the last one to fall.
Yes. And this is what we're at the end time for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. The last city to fall is probably the point here, because he's talking specifically about Jerusalem and their sins. Your doom has come to you, O inhabitant of the land. The time has come, the day is near, tumult rather than joyful shouting in the mountains. So, you know, I've got a little note talking about the echo. When people are happy and they're, you know, running around and things are going well, you know, you can hear the echoes in the mountains in that area because it's kind of rocky and hilly. "Now I will shortly pour out my wrath upon you and spend my anger against you, judge you according to your ways, and bring on you all your abominations. My eye will show no pity, nor will I spare. I will repay you according to your ways, while your abominations are in your midst. Then you will know that I, the Lord, do the smiting." It's kind of a repeat of what we read in verse 3 and verse 4, the same chapter. It's, "Behold, the day, behold, it is coming. Your doom is gone forth, the rod is budded, arrogance has blossomed." So it's time for God's vigilance. It's not the right word. "Violence has grown into a rod of wickedness. None of them shall remain, none of their people, none of their wealth, nor anything eminent among them. The time is come, but the day has arrived. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller mourn, for wrath is against all their multitude. Indeed, the seller will not regain what he sold as long as they both live, for the vision regarding all their multitude will not be averted, nor will any of them maintain this life by his iniquity." You know, even if he's still alive.
Mike, there's some buying and selling. From what I was able to find looking up some of this stuff, they went against God's law about your land. where every 50 years was the year of Jubilee, they were selling the land outright, and then they would not ever have that Jubilee come around again. And that's why God says that sellers will never get their land back, because they sold it outright.
Yeah, because that's just another one of God's laws that they were breaking, that they weren't doing.
Yes.
You know, even though if they live it, they're still alive. They don't. It's gone. You know. They have blown the trumpet and made everything ready, but no one is going to the battle, for my wrath is against all their multitude. The sword is outside, and the plague and the famine are within. He who is in the field will die by the sword. Famine and the plague will also consume those in the city. So there's no security anywhere. You know, he talks about that they've blown the trumpet, which is an alert for war, you know, or some tragedy that's coming. But nobody's going to come defend it.
You know who was blowing the horn was Jeremiah. He was prophesying at this exact same time in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And they were not heeding his warning.
Yeah. Nobody's going to battle.
No.
You know, and if people went outside, they would die by the sword because those armies are out there. And if they stayed in the city, you know.
Pestilence and famine because they were under siege.
Yeah. Famine, bad water probably.
Yep.
Which brings all these problems that we're aware of today. And same thing happened to them. Even when their survivors escape, they will be on the mountains like doves of the valley, all of them mourning each over his own iniquity. So any of them escape, they're going to be to the mountains, but they're going to be mourning what's happened to them, you know, when their civilization is collapsed. All hands will hang limp, and all knees will become like water. So no resistance. They're going to be, you know, terrified probably. You know, they're up in the mountains and trying to survive, and you know, no water, no food, eating grass, and those kinds of things. They will gird themselves with sackcloth, and shuddering will overwhelm them, and shame will be on their faces, and baldness on all their heads. So baldness is a sign of mourning. So they're like, oh, what's happened? You know, how did this overcome us? And that's what Ezekiel's telling them. That's what Jeremiah is telling them. But you're doing all these things against God, and that's why you got the problem. And gee, it's too late now. You know, they shall fling their silver into the streets, and their gold shall become an abhorrent thing. Their silver and their gold shall not be able to deliver them in the day of wrath of the Lord. They cannot satisfy their appetites, nor can they fill their stomachs, for their iniquity has become an occasion of stumbling. You know, it's going to be worthless. There's nothing to buy. There's nobody to sell it. And gold's going to be an abhorrent thing because it's heavy. You know, you got to carry it around with you. It won't buy anything. It just weighs you down.
It's showing where their priority was. It was in the value of money. Mm-hmm. They thought money could protect and use that as security, which is a mistake that we can't afford to do today.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. You know, we've just got to remember that we are today living in a blessed nation, and we have no idea what it's like to live in the world that's different. And you know, if the electricity stops, what's going to happen? No gas, no money, no groceries. You know, it's a pretty simple thing. It will radically change things, and we'll be just like these people. And the money, whatever we saved, whatever we have, when we eat up what we got in the refrigerator and the shelves, you know, that's kind of it. And that's the situation that these people were in.
That's where you have to have total faith in God.
Absolutely right.
He will provide.
You can't prepare for whatever it is. You got to trust God.
No matter how much you stockpile, eventually it runs out. Then what will you do? All you do is delay the inevitable.
Or your neighbor comes and takes it.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, you got food? Bang, bang. You know, now I got it. Yep. They transformed the beauty of his ornaments into pride, and they made the images of their abominations and their detestable things with it. Therefore, I will make it an abhorrent thing to them. This is kind of talking about, you know, what they had in the temple and what they had in their life, and it's just turned against them because they forgot God. They forgot why and how they got there. I shall give it into the hands of the foreigners as plunder, and to the wicked of the earth as spoil, and they will profane it. So he said, you know, you guys are going to lose this war, and everything you got they're going to take from you. I shall also turn my face from them, and they will profane my secret place. then robbers will enter and profane it. I think we saw this happen in the temple. It was captured. I think it was Nehemiah took all the gold and silver, articles of worship, things they used in the temple. They took all that up there, to Babylon. Make the chain, and this is talking about captivity. For the land is full of bloody crimes, and the city is full of violence. Therefore, I shall bring the worst of the nations, and they will possess their houses. I shall also make the pride of their strong ones cease, and their holy places will be profaned. He's going to bring people on that are going to take the houses over. They'll just run everybody off, just like they did in Israel. When they were captured in Israel, the Assyrians brought other people in to occupy the land and just gave them houses and pre-pet farms, probably houses and farms that had been in families for generations, and they were gone, and some stranger came in and took it over and just gave it to them. It's like you've done all this work for somebody else for all these years. Then the anguish comes, they will seek peace, but there will be none. It's like, how did this happen to me? Let's go back and change our ways or whatever, and it's going to be too late because they've had warnings, just like we've had warnings. You've got prophets that gave warnings all throughout the Old Testament, and they were completely ignored. Originally in this country we had, we acknowledge God, and now we're kicking God out of every place, and when we're brought down, we're going to say, gee, what happened? Maybe we ought to bring God back. And he's like, you guys need to learn a lesson. Disaster will come upon disaster, and rumor will be added to rumor. Then they will seek a vision from a prophet, but the law will be lost from the priest and counsel from their elders. They won't have any direction. I don't know exactly what that means. If they go, go to their ministers, they're going to hear the same thing they've been hearing all this time. They're not going to get the truth. It's just not available to them. The king will mourn, the prince will be clothed with horror, and the hands of the people and of the land will tremble. According to their conduct I shall deal with them, and by their judgments I will judge them, and they will know that I am the Lord. Again, here's that. These people will know why these things are happening. It's God's retribution on what they have done. And again, they'll be judged as they judge other people. And I continually caution everybody to be careful how you judge other people, because, the harder and more critical you are of them, it's going to come back to you. So I forgive everybody easily. Verse 8, chapter 8. This is the second scroll, and this talks about the present state of Israel. And about the temple abominations, and where the wicked are slain, and where God departs the temple and leaves because of all the things that the people have done. Kind of the same thing we're seeing here. We're going to kick you out of schools. He left, and now they're like, how could this happen? I saw a thing the other day said there's been 128 cases where law enforcement has stopped a Columbine-type massacre. Wow. Where kids are wanting to go do that, and in like 40% of those, they mentioned Columbine. And the one I saw the other day was a teenage girl, and she was all lined out, had a diary, all the things she was going to do, and she was trying to get a automatic rifle, and she was just going to go kill a lot of people, just like Columbine. And their parents, good for them, found her diary and called the cops, and the cops came in and got her, and they put her in a mental institution to have her checked out. What can you say about somebody that's going to go shoot all the kids of their classmates in school? 128 events that did not happen, that we really don't know much about. Scary, scary, scary world out there. It came about in the 6th year, on the 5th day of the 6th month, as I was sitting in my house with the elders of Judah sitting before me, that the hand of the Lord fell upon me there. They were in captivity at that time, and this probably took place on the Sabbath. We don't know for sure, but it sounds like the elders of Judah, the princes and the leaders, were there. And I looked, and behold, a likeness as the appearance of a man. From his loins and downward there was the appearance of fire, and from his loins and upward the appearance of brightness, like the appearance of the glowing metal, which we assume is polished brass because we keep running across that. This is kind of a repeat of what we read in Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 4. The same kind of images, maybe a little better detail here. He stretched out the form of a hand and caught me by the lock of my head. Oh, now would that be a scary thought? Here's this big spirit being and grabs you by the hair of your head. And the Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven and brought me in the visions of God to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the north gate of the inner court, where the seat of the idol of jealousy, which provokes the jealousy, was located. And I believe that's Astarte. You'll see who that is. So he was in vision, and he wasn't physically moved there, but that's where he went, in his mind anyway. And behold, the glory of the God of Israel was there, like the appearance which I saw in the plain. There was just this glory of God, this brightness was there that he saw. Then he said to me, Son of man, raise your eyes now toward the north. So I raised my eyes toward the north, and behold, to the north of the altar gate was this idol of jealousy of the entrance. And that's Astarte, the goddess of passion and reproduction, I think, all these kinds of things. Then he said to me, Son of man, do you see what they are doing? The great abominations which the house of Israel is committing here, so that I would be far from my sanctuary. So I'd be run off. They're doing these things to run God away, just like we see today. But yet, you will still see greater abominations than these. Then he brought me to the entrance of the court, and when I looked back, behold, a hole in the wall. And he said to me, Son of man, now dig through the wall. So I dug through the wall, and behold, an entrance. And he said to me, Go in and see the wicked abominations that they are committing there. Let's back up to Ezekiel chapter 5 real quick. Verse 11. It says, So I live, declares the Lord God, surely because you have defiled my sanctuary with all your abominations, therefore I will also withdraw, and my eye shall have no pity, and will not spare. That's kind of what we're dealing with here.
Mike, just out of curiosity, this is in vision. There's a wall. He had him dig through the wall to a door. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, there's not a door in the wall and all. Could this be the people of Israel? What he's looking at is their heart, what they are desiring, what their heart wants to do. Their heart wants to run to all of this abominable stuff, to where he's looking at the people as God looks at us, at our heart. How is our heart? What is it like?
That's certainly possible, because the next verse it says, I looked, and behold, every form of creeping thing and beast and detestable things with all the idols of the house of Israel were carved on the wall around it. So that could be the condition of the people.
Because when we turn against God, or we go away from God, don't we put up a wall between us and God?
We certainly put a block
and
up.
So this is, he had to dig through their barrier they put up between God and them. Mm-hmm. Just speculation, that's all.
Yeah, well, it certainly fits. He certainly looked at creeping things and beasts and detectable things, and that's what the people were doing. That's what was in their heart, seemed to be.
Yeah.
Standing in front of them were 70 elders of the house of Israel, with Jezaniah the son of Shaphan standing among them, each man with his censer in his hand, and the fragrance of the cloud of incense rising. And he said to me, Son of man, do you see what the elders of the house of Israel are committing in the dark, each man in the room of his carved image? For they say, The Lord does not see us, the Lord has forsaken the land. So he has left them alone.
Yeah.
They think they're doing these things, and God's not aware of what they are doing. And we have the same situation here today. Just total denial, or totally unaware that God's there. And we see so much in the scientific community where they do things, and it seems like their first criteria is deny God. How could this happen without God? That seems to be their thrust. Yes, sir.
It's kind of like Ezekiel today. You have to bust through all the barriers that people have put up. putting God out or describing Him in their own terms or following Him in their ways, and not not accepting Him.
Yeah, I saw a scientist talking about global warming, and it's like there's people that are all deal on emotions, and then there's people that are science and deal with the facts.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they cut that out. They just slice it that.
We have a comment. It says, please explain how you came to 8 being the second scroll. What have I missed?
Okay. If you look at the date,
592, isn't it?
yeah, I think so. And I think, Lauren, you must have missed the time when I started around, and I started with chapter 8 being the first scroll. But if you look at chapter 1, you'll see that let me go back here and look real quick to get this right. It says, now it came about in the 30th year on the 5th day. And what has happened is that this 30th year, see, all these dates were from the date of King Hezekiah. Hezekiah? That's not right.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Jehoiakim.
Jehoiakim.
Dated from Jehoiakim. So they've taken this 30 years as 30 years of King Jehoiakim's rule, and they put this first chapter at the end of it because 30 years is longer than any other time here. But the reality is that that's Ezekiel, how old Ezekiel was, which puts it right up in front. Because if you look at the context of book 1, it's about the calling where God comes in and says, Ezekiel, do this and do that and do that, talking about laying on the side for the representing the length of time that Jerusalem's going to be under siege. Doesn't make any sense at all to have that after the end of the book. I mean, Jerusalem's already fallen. So this, if you look at this as Jeremiah's age, that puts it up as the first scroll. And if that's the first scroll, then the next scroll that comes up starts in chapter 8. Yes, sir.
We have another comment. It says, I think the wall and door is a picture of the people thinking that they are hiding from God.
Good point.
Yeah.
Which kind of backs up what you're saying.
Because you can't hide from God. I don't care what you do or where you go.
That's right. That's right.
Do you think that when they put the Father out of the public arena, that He's just there, that He's not there anymore, and He doesn't know what they're doing?
It's easier to live a sinful life without God being around and having to deal with the Bible. If you do away with the Bible, then that means you can do whatever you want, and science has elevated science above the Bible.
Right.
Because science will tell you where we came, how we got here, how the universe was created, everything. You can't prove any of it, but people will sure believe it.
But that doesn't, just because they do away with it, doesn't mean it's been done away with.
No,
Correct.
absolutely. No.
Yes.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Well, and to her point, what a lot of it is, they say 80% of this country believes in God, or a version of it or something. And I think a lot of people want to believe that there's a God, but they've never been taught, it's never been instilled to them the importance of God or anything like that. They just go through their life, well, I hope there's a God, and if He is, I hope I've been good enough to get into heaven, and I'm not going to fry like bacon in hell, kind of thing, or I'll convert whenever I'm dying or something to that nature,
Deathbed
people
conversion.
they just have this fanciful view about God.
That's the difference between people that God is working with and calling, and those that have accepted, and those that God has not called. It's not their time, so they don't have a shot of knowing God because God has not revealed Himself to them, and they're doing the best they can with what they have.
Well, it's easier to believe in fairy tales because they get that through Disney on their televisions. than it is to believe in God, because they don't show that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's also complicated with the fact that God has made everybody free moral agents. So you can do what you want to do without any correction. I mean, if people out here that are doing wrong got their hand slapped every time they did something wrong, they'd realize there was something going on. But that's not God's plan. That's not what God wants. He wants it to be something that we willfully follow Him. We can do what we want. We can go rob a bank tonight. We can do what we want to do. But God wants people that have decided to follow His way.
And most people don't really get serious about religion until they get in their middle ages.
Or later.
Yeah.
Start cramming to their finals, as they say. Yeah.
You have one more comment.
Okay.
It says the 30 year was the years that Jehoiachin was in exile.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that. I just know that Ezekiel was born in 662 or something, and 30 years off of that's
392.
Well, maybe it's 632 or something like that. So that's the date that fits. And if you read what's the context of the scrolls, the only place this first chapter this would be is in the front, because that's when Ezekiel received his commission. That's when he recognized that he was going to be a tool of God, and he's got to do that first, and then he prophesies how long Jerusalem is going to be sieged.
Also, according to law, you had to be 30 years old before you can start being a rabbi in the temple. Mm-hmm. It would have gone contrary to everything if he'd have started, because Christ even waited till he was 30 to start his ministry in earnest.
But then, see, you got people like Jeremiah who were much, much younger. So that's a general rule, but there are certainly exceptions.
There are exceptions to the rule, and
yeah.
Okay, I take it all back.
But no, but it's a good thought. But the key is looking at the context and what's happening with the scroll that starts in chapter 1, and that's got to be on the front end. If it's on the back end, it makes absolutely no sense. If Jerusalem's already fallen, they're all in captivity, then why is Jeremiah laying on his side for, all this time, saying this is predicting what's going to happen to him? It just doesn't fit. It sounds good when you listen to it, but when you dig down into it, you see where it doesn't make any sense. So that's why chapter 8 is the second one. All right, let's see. I'm right in the middle of verse 12. So the Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land. Yeah, He's left them all alone. Another reason that people want to acknowledge God, and acknowledge the Bible, that's a problem for so many of them, because if they do that, then they can't justify the way they live their life, whatever it is. They just don't want these restraints. They just don't want to make that commitment. And if they acknowledge it, then they got to change the way they live. So I refuse to acknowledge it, because I'd rather live my way than change. And He said to me, "Yet you will see still greater abominations which are coming." And He brought me to the entrance of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, women were sitting there weeping for Tammuz. Now, we know who Tammuz is. He's the grandson of Noah. He was one of the Egyptian gods. His symbol was a cross, not the Latin cross like we see today, but a variation of it. And I forget the exact number. Maybe there's 24 or 38 different kind of crosses, very anything you can think of. A bunch of them.
The book behind you's got them up there.
Oh, does it? Yeah. Just scads of them. And He said to me, "Do you see this, son of man? You will see greater abominations than these." And this is women who were weeping for Tammuz, because I don't know why. I guess he was dead or something.
Yeah, he was killed by a boar hog.
Yeah.
On his 40th birthday.
Oh, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And he was separated and sent to every corner,
Oh, was that the one?
Well, it was a variation of it. The original one was
Semiramis or somebody? Nimrod, yeah.
But the weeping was ceremonial weeping. It was a show. It wasn't
And it was 40 days, just like Lent. 40
Yeah,
days.
yeah. Well, that weeping ceremonially was a custom, a cultural custom at the time. They'd hire people to come cry at all the funerals because they wanted it to be a big deal, you know. All this carrying on. I think we can still see some of it in the Near East. You know, at funerals or bad things happening. It's just, you know, it's incredible. Then he brought me to the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, the entrance of the temple to the Lord between the porch and the altar were about 25 men with their backs to the temple of the Lord and their faces toward the east, and they were prostrating themselves eastward toward the sun. Sun worship, you know.
Easter.
Sunrise service.
Sunrise service, that's right, you know. You see it in cemeteries today where everybody, or most everybody, is buried so when they sit up they're facing east. Or as some of them say, they're facing the holy city. I went to a Jewish funeral, and I was kind of surprised. I don't know why, I just hadn't thought about it, but all their headstones are facing east as well. And I said, what's the deal? Thinking sun. And they said, oh, they're facing the holy city of Jerusalem, which is still to the east, you know.
You know, it's Tamaz, which is Lent. And what does Lent lead up to? Easter, which is what these 25 men were doing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's just showing, but even back then, they had the same rituals we have today.
Yeah. And their backs were turned to God.
Yes.
You know, just like that's what's happening today as well. He said to me, do you see this, Son of Man? Is it too light a thing for the house of Judah to commit the abominations which they have committed here, that they have filled the land with violence and provoked me and repeatedly? For behold, they are putting the twig to their nose, which was a saying that they said back in that culture. Twig to the nose is like blowing them off, you know. It's like, we don't care about you. That's kind of what it amounts to. We don't respect you, you know. Therefore I indeed shall deal in wrath. My eye will have no pity, nor shall I spare. And though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, yet I shall not listen to them. Proverbs 1:28. Then they will call on me, but I will not answer. They will seek me diligently, but they shall not find me. So there's a point in time coming when God's going to say, that's enough. I'm not going to be involved anymore. You know, mankind will have had their 6,000 years to straighten things out. Everybody, you know, we'll have said, hey, here's the truth. Listen, here it is. You know, and we're ignored, God's ignored, and God will say, okay, that's it. I'm done.
Here's the scary part of this whole thing. He is not prophesying against the world. He is prophesying against God's people in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm. Well, the ones in the temple, yeah, which are
Well,
supposed
all
to be.
of Jerusalem. And where Judah is who he's really prophesying against, is Judah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's hard to imagine, though, looking at some of these things that God's called people, you know, we're doing this, like keeping Easter.
You know where it all got started in earnest? All of this idol worship, all of the adultery, started with Solomon with all of his wives. You start reading from Solomon forward. He brought in all those idols for all of his wives, and it just kept perpetuating through all the kings. Well, not all of them. You had some good kings that tried to get rid of a lot of the stuff. But in earnest, it got started with Solomon.
I forget which way it was. I think Judah had no good kings, and Israel had
The other way around.
Yeah,
other way around.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Israel had no good kings, and Judah had
A few,
a few. You know, not too many.
but not the last couple.
Not the last. No, not the last couple. Yeah. You know. Yeah. You know, I guess this is people that God has called and they didn't respond. You know, they didn't make that choice. You know, if you're going to say God's people, you know, it's
And
like,
a lot of it you can throw upon the leadership, because the leadership went that way and it just filters down.
Sure.
That's where everyone has to take responsibility for themselves.
Yeah, because they listen to what they're taught, and that's what they believe. They don't read the Bible. They don't think about it. You know, they don't make that commitment. And even though they may have been, their eyes may be opened, they just don't respond.
You have to be as the Bereans did with Paul. They checked to make sure everything he said was correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And he complimented them on that, their diligence.
And that's what you need to do.
Yeah,
Because there's all kinds of stuff floating around that doesn't pass this test. You know. Then he cried out in my ear with a loud voice, saying, "Draw near, O executioners of the city, each with his own destroying weapon in his hand." So he's, vehemently saying, "You guys come near with your destroying weapons." Behold, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his shattering weapon in his hand, and among them was a certain man clothed in linen, and a writing case at his loins. And they went in and stood beside the bronze altar, which is where the burnt offerings were. Then the glory of the God of Israel went up from the cherub on which it had been to the threshold of the temple, and he called to the man clothed in linen, at whose loins was the writing case. And the Lord said to him, "Go through the midst of the city, even through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the abominations which are being committed in its midst." But to the others he said to my hearing, "Go through the city after him and strike. Do not let your eye have pity, and do not spare. Utterly slay old men, young men, maidens, and little children and women, but do not touch any man on whom is the mark, and you shall start from my sanctuary." So they started with the elders who were before the temple.
Does that sound kind of familiar to Passover with the lamb? They put the blood on the doorpost, and when the angel went over, they did not get, same as there was a mark on these people.
Yeah,
They
same thing.
were the only ones that were still following God.
Yeah, yeah. And everybody else, regardless, old women, little kids,
Didn't matter.
got rid of them. And he said to them, "Defile the temple and fill the courts with the slain. Go out." Thus they went out and struck down the people in the city. Then it came about as they were striking, and I alone was left, that I fell on my face and cried out, saying, "Alas, Lord God, are you destroying the whole remnant of Israel by pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem?" It was just looked like everybody was getting killed. It means there weren't that many people that had that sign, that mark. Not much different than it is today. There's those that have circumcised hearts. You can't tell who they are, but we know there's not a whole lot of them as a proportion of the population. Just a small number. And I bet it looked to him, and probably would look like to us the same way, going through killing women and kids and old people and young people and everybody. It looked like everybody's dying, which is what it looked like. You go to a restaurant and everybody in there struck dead. You're kind of standing around and say, "What happened?"
Kind of challenges the doctrine of what they call that about little children who the world believes it until they get to an age of
Accountability.
Yeah, accountability. Exactly.
Because he doesn't look at it like that.
No.
Well, it seems so. All the people that received the mark that were protected, these were people that saw what was going on. They knew it was wrong. So that means all the people that died, they knew that they didn't know that this was wrong. I think it's real interesting. It doesn't matter if you were participating or not in the sin. If you knew in your heart that this was wrong, you were protected. And if you thought this was normal and this was life the way it was supposed to be,
You weren't protected.
you weren't protected.
Yeah, that's correct.
And
That's correct.
When they knew it was wrong, they were not participating in the acts.
Yeah. We've got to remember about little kids, because that's all children and babies and stuff, and that's always a contentious thing. People say, "How can that happen?" But we've got to remember that they're going to be resurrected.
Yeah.
Just because they have a short life or a bad life now in this age, after Christ returns and they're going to be resurrected, the second resurrection, they're going to have that opportunity.
Well, and it would be my guess as well, and it's just a guess, that if they were in a household of somebody who received the mark, that they may have been protected because that person in the house received the mark, and kind of like Noah and his family was protected because, simply because of him.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't know what degree that happens, but that certainly happens. We see it today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those of us in the church, you know, our families are protected because we don't do things that would bring danger to them. You know, it's not like we live in South Chicago, you know, where all this stuff's going out in the street. We wouldn't be there. We'd be someplace else. And by the way we live our lives, that protects our family, you know. Where if somebody's up living a different kind of life, not paying any attention, his kids are going to go out and they'll be doing drugs, they're going to be shooting stuff, you know.
And 380.
Yeah, yep, that's right. So that's a wonderful blessing that we have, is that we can protect our family. You know, that doesn't mean everybody's going to live forever. It doesn't mean bad things can't happen. You know, but it's a better life than a lot of people see or have.
Did you notice where it said to the angel that killed him not to have any pity? They had to die no matter what. You didn't pity them, you just did your job.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and that's got to be pretty hard. And even now we think about it. You know, we talked about school shootings a while ago. You know, it's really a pretty horrible thing to have all these kids shot. You know, and we certainly don't want it to happen. But when it's God making the call, it's kind of different than somebody deciding, well, let's go shoot some kids. You know, it's not our call; it's God's call.
Well, I think it's important to know that you know, God's going to have His wisdom, and it may seem cruel to us that a child may die, but nobody knows but God what would have happened in that child's life later on if that child was to continue living, especially if the world is getting worse and worse perpetually. By a child dying, that child could be saved from a horrendous life.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it was Randy or one of them said that, you know, they're going to have an opportunity to live with the knowledge of God in the second resurrection, you know, grow up and be a productive person in society in God's kingdom, you know, instead of a raving lunatic with a boombox.
There's certainly been, you know, many examples of man's inhumanity to man, you know, regardless where or who. Like, you look at the wars, you look at, you know, Stalin, you look at what Hitler did to the Jews and the Polish. You know, Stalin killed more people than Hitler did, but, you know, we don't really know. And you look at what happened in Japan, you know, how horrible all that stuff was to the people just because the government wanted to go do something. You know, the regular working person, you know, really didn't want to be involved in that, but they had to pay that price. You know, so there's a lot of horrendous things that have happened, and we see things in this country, horrendous things that happen, mass murderers, things we just can't comprehend, you know, because we don't think like those people do. Just a whole different thing. It'll be a great time when Christ returns. Mm-hmm. All this will be done. That's the good news, I think. Then he said to me, the iniquity of the house of Israel and Judah is very great, and the land is filled with blood, and the city is full of perversion. For they say, the Lord has forsaken the land, and the Lord does not see. So just many abominations, You know, we kind of make the same statement about ourselves. There's all this stuff going on that we're totally unaware of. And I want to remain that way. Sometimes I hear about some of these things that are going on, and you're like, what? You know, you just can't believe it. It's beyond comprehension. And then it says, but as for me, my eye will have no pity, nor shall I spare, but I shall bring their conduct upon their head, and the way they live their lives. They're going to pay that penalty for it.
Well, it's kind of like Sodom and Gomorrah. He didn't have pity on that city.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nothing lived.
Yeah.
Not even a cockroach.
You know how
That's amazing.
You know how we were feeling sorry about the little children and all that was slain in this? Remember, they were not slain. This is all vision. Uh-huh. It's just, this is what's going to happen, that it didn't happen yet. But this is what will happen. It's all vision. It didn't happen. Well, it did happen, but not at that specific moment.
When,
Come on, Randy.
when Jerusalem fell and Babylon came in, these were, these are rough, crude people. They killed everything or raped everything they could. I mean, it's just a horrible thing would have happened.
We now know who they went after. Was those that did not have the mark of God,
Yeah.
because it said those with the mark of God were spared.
Yep. Verse 10, Then I looked, and behold, in the expanse that was over the heads of the cherubim, something like a sapphire stone in appearance resembling a throne appeared above them.
Hold it, stop. Go to chapter 9.
Well, I skip chapter 9?
Oh, no. Go to verse 10 of chapter 9.
Okay. But as for me, my eyes shall have no pity, nor shall I spare, but I shall bring their conduct upon their heads.
Well, okay, verse 10 and 11 you didn't read of chapter 9.
Then behold, the man was clothed in linen, whose loins was the writing case reported, saying, I have done just as you have commanded me. 11 I didn't read.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
Sorry about
Thank
that.
you. No, it's good. I get carried away sometimes. But the point on 10, though, is looked at is God does see. He sees what's going on. He's bringing their conduct down on their heads. Then I looked and beheld in the expanse that was over the heads of the cherubim something like a sapphire stone, in appearance resembling a throne, appeared above them. And he spoke to the man clothed in linen and said, Enter between the whirling wheels under the cherubim, and fill your hands with the coals of fire from between the cherubim, and scatter them over the city. And he entered in my sight.
That's a cleansing.
That's a cleansing thing. And like you say, like Randy said, he is in vision. But can you imagine seeing that, what that would be like? What if you had to go in and grab that fire? Just trust God, that's all you can do. Now the cherubim were standing on the right side of the temple when the man entered, and the cloud filled the inner court. So that cloud is, just kind of soothing what's happening, I think. Then the glory of the Lord went up from the cherub to the threshold of the temple, and the temple was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the glory of the Lord. Moreover, the sound of the wings of the cherubim was heard as far as the outer court, like the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. It came about when he commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, Take fire from between the whirling wheels, from between the cherubim. He entered and stood beside the wheel. Then the cherubim stretched out his hand from between the cherubim to the fire, which was between the cherubim, took some and put it into the hands of the one clothed in linen, who took it and went out. The cherubim appeared to have a form of a man's hand under their wings. And this is again repeating what we read in the first chapter of Ezekiel. Then I looked, and behold, 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside each cherubim, and the appearance of the wheel was like the gleam of a tarnished stone. So it's like a little closer vision than he had in the first chapter. As for their appearance, all 4 of them had the same likeness, as if 1 wheel were within another wheel. Then they moved, and they went in any of their 4 directions without turning as they went, but they followed in the direction which they faced without turning as they went. Their whole body, their backs, their hands, their wings, and the wheels were full of eyes all around, the wheels belonging to all 4 of them. The wheels were called in my hearing the whirling wheels, and each one had 4 faces. The first face was the face of a cherub, the second face was the face of a man, the third face of the lion, and the 4th face of an eagle. And that's how he viewed them. That's how you could kind of describe it. And as mentioned before, these are all the top of the food chain in there, like the eagle's the top flying bird, and the lion's the strongest animal, and man's the highest of mankind, I guess, that kind of thing. Then the cherub rose up, and they are living beings that I saw by the river Chebar. So that's where he was. He's by his house on his front porch probably. Now when the cherubim moved, the wheels would go beside them, and also when the cherubim lifted up their wings to rise from the ground, the wheels would not turn from beside them. Then the cherubim stood still, the wheels would stand still, and they would rise, and when they rose up, the wheels would rise with them, for the spirit of the living beings was with them.
Can I interject something right here?
Please do.
This, this is just a thought. I mean, we've talked about him looking into the future and the modern visions and different things like that. But just stop and consider this one point about him looking at this particular vision. This is, whatever this is that he's seeing is flying. It's 3,500 years before anything actual flies. It's mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
He has no concept that man could produce something mechanical to fly.
Right.
So this in itself is in a prediction in itself that man will one day create something that will fly.
Well, remember, these are cherubim. They were created before man, before the earth. These things were created who knows how long ago.
Well, sure, and I believe that's true. And the fact that itself is just he's a human being who's recording that there is something mechanical or mechanical looking flying when no other person has that vision.
Well, how about was it not Isaac, but who they say never died because he got on one chick. Elijah, yes, thank you. Where he got on a chariot and flew off
Well,
with
see, that's another example. That in itself is extraordinary when you stop and think about them recording that in these scriptures at this time.
Mm-hmm. Because that was a concept that
Yeah,
mankind didn't have. This clearly came from God because man did.
exactly right.
You know, I mean, they could see birds fly, but that was about it. That was about it.
3 minutes.
Speaking of that, last year in California, they saw 554 UFOs. So, wonder what those were.
Mushrooms.
In California, that's right, mushrooms, hemp, who knows? But something was going on. Okay. Then the glory of the Lord departed from the threshold of the temple and stood over the cherubim. When the cherubim departed, they lifted their wings and rose up from the earth in my sight with the wheels beside them, and they stood still at the entrance of the east gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of the God of Israel hovered over them. These are the living beings that I saw beneath the God of Israel by the river Chebar, so I knew that they were cherubim. Each one had 4 faces, each one 4 wings, and beneath their wings was a form of human hands. As for the likeness of their faces, they were the same face whose appearance I had seen by the river Chebar. Each one went straight ahead. So it's kind of a repetition.
And it also shows that chapter 1 had to have been written prior to this because he's referring to
Back to that, yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Did you have a comment?
Nope.
Okay, with that, we are going to end this Bible study. We're pretty near at the end of the time anyways. Just to reiterate to everyone, not this Sunday night, but the following Sunday night is Passover, and then the following Tuesday is Days of Unleavened Bread. But before all of that, this coming Saturday, if you're in Austin, we have church service at 10:30, and you are more than welcome. If you're in Houston, they have church service at 12 o'clock. And if you're in Waco, they have church service at 1 o'clock. And you're more than welcome to go to any church service. And please, please, please keep the family of Robert Bruce in your prayers. And just ask God to give them comfort and to get them through this. Because it's pretty tough losing a dad. Plus, was someone that's very close to God. And with that, I am going to say have a very good evening, and may God bless you and have a blessed week.